Hello, good morning everyone. I am Christine Tan, along with my groupmates Russell John Manegdeg and Shira May Tamanyo. So our objective today is to define the new historicism and to discuss its historical background and to also determine the focus, the weaknesses, and the strength of the new historicism. What is historicism? Literary historicism is a field of study devoted to grasping the relationship which links a literary work to its social and historical context. But the question arises, do social and historical determinants express or manifest themselves through the literary works? Can a text, for example, a work of fantasy, be historically informed even if it is not realistic? So now this leads us to the new historicism. New historicism is based on the idea that literature should be studied and interpreted within the context of both the history of the author and the history of the critic. This is a method of literary criticism that emphasizes the historicity of a text by relating it to the configuration of power, society, or ideology in a given time. So I have here Greenblatt's definition of the new historicism. Actually, you will get to know Greenblatt more later on this presentation with a different reporter, but now let us just focus on his definition of the new historicism. According to him, the new historicism is a study of collective making of cultural practices, an inquiry into relations among those practices, and it is more accurately described as a set of preoccupation. So the new historicism questions its own methodological assumptions and is less concerned with treating the literary works as models of organic unity than as fields of force, places of dissensions and shifting interest, occasions for jostling of orthodox and subversive impulses. The new historicism also challenges the hierarchical distinction between literary foreground and political background, as well as between the artistic and other kinds of production. So now let us learn the differences between the old and the new historicism. The old historicism is hierarchical. It is a historical movement and it creates a historical framework in which to place the text. It's like the word of the past replaces the world of the past. Meanwhile, the new historicism is parallel reading. It is a historicist movement. It is also interested in history as presented and recorded in the written documents or the history as text. The aim of the new historicism is not to represent the past as it really was, but to present a new reality by resituating it. The new historicism acknowledges not only that a work of literature is influenced by the author's time and circumstances, but that the critic's response to that work is also influenced by his environment, beliefs, and prejudice. A new historicist looks at literature in a wider historical context, examining both how the writer's time affected the work and how the work reflects the writer's time, recognizing that the current cultural context which colors the critic's conclusions. As we've done our research online, we found an article that tackles the topic of whether the Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice demonstrates his anti-Semitism. So, as we all know, anti-Semitism is a hatred or a prejudice against the Jews, and it always arises while analyzing the play. So the new historicist understands that there isn't a straightforward yes or no response that can be gleaned from reading the text. Studying the work can reveal the cultural history, particularly according to the new historicist, by examining the use and distribution of the power, as well as the marginalization of the social classes within the work. This work must be evaluated in the context in which it is written. So it's like this: the history can be studied to learn more about the text, and the text can be studied to learn more about the history. So it's like vice versa.
Hello, good day everyone. So I'll be the one who will discuss with you the historical background of New Historicism. So the term New Historicism was created by Stefan Grunblatt, in full, Stefan J. Grunblatt, born on November 7, 1943, an American scholar who was credited with establishing New Historicism, an approach to literary criticism that mandated the interpretation of literature in terms of the milieu from which it emerged, as a dominant mode of Anglo-American literary analysis by the end of the 20th century. He was considered to be among the preeminent scholars of Renaissance literature in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, and was particularly noted for his analysis of William Shakespeare's works. New Historicism was introduced in the 1980s by Louis Montrose and Stefan Grunblatt. New Historicism is indebted to Marxism, and the one who influenced New Historicism is Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, and his discourse on power theory has profound influence on New Historicism, which take history as discontinuous and narrative. Michel Foucault holds the view that the history is in discontinuity, and his discourse theory is used to support his ideas. But the historical criticism practiced in the 1980s was not the same as the historical criticisms of the 1930s and 1940s. New historicists believe that criticism should be incorporate diverse discourse. New historicism is informed by post-structuralist theory as well as feminist, cultural, and Marxist criticism. The only distinction between the two are Marxism sees literature as part of a superstructure in which the economic base manifests itself, while New Historicist thinkers tend to take a more distinct view of power, seeing it exclusively as class-related but extending throughout society.
Hello everyone, I will be the one to report the focus, strength, and weaknesses of New Historicism. Moving on, let's talk about the focus of Historicism. New Historicists focus more on the subversive feature of the literary text as to show how the weaker segments of the society, such as women, minorities, and marginalized people, may find voice in the place for the subversive of the dominant forces of power of the literary text. So new historicists such as Grunblatt and Sinfield view literary texts as carriers of power. Hence, literary texts embody a potential for power and subversive like in other discourses and institutions of the society. Thus, in contemporary attempt to resist power is a great deal of focus is shifted to the literary text. Therefore, New Historicism studies the past as the stimulus of power, tussle in the present. And in doing this, it also shows that the domain of literature is not detached from the sphere of politics. And New Historicism also challenges the distinction between literary foreground and political background, as well as between artistic and other kinds of production. There are 4 examples of strengths in New Historicism. The first one is always can relate to the novel, because even though it has been characterized to the history or past events, but new historians also acknowledge the examination of literature by its own culture and environment that embraces the idea that as time change, but it still remain in helping hand to a great literature. The second one is learn an opinion about the topic. New historicism can help readers better grasp the meaning of literature and the historical time period during it was written. The third one is learn about the culture of the time period. This interesting approach to literature analyzes taking a keen interest in the finer details, especially with regards to the cultural, social, and a little bit of the political scenes. Influencing the context of many historical critics, we learn about culture, thus, it is spread like wildfire, transcending socio-cultural and historical boundaries. And lastly, the basic for other language-centered theories. And there are also 4 weaknesses of new historicism. The first one is history can be interpreted differently, because the elements of historicism also inform hermeneutics and reader response theory, which is obliged to take into account the different meanings, making things interpret that a text might have the readers of various historical periods or different from a historical reality. The second one is they don't make characterizations of character. It is often difficult to relate new histories to the science fiction genre or characterization. The third one is new historicism disregard the author's personal ideology, for it might differ from the general public of the author time period. And lastly, they don't read the plot too much.